Mindy is a great friend and a great advocate for women in tech. So I'm excited to have her here to chat with us about curiosity. Take it away, Mindy.
Hey, Ronnie. Yeah, Ronnie's been a great friend and helps me a lot with my women in tech stuff. So thank you, Ronnie, and thank you all for having me. So my name is Mindy Wyke. I have been all over the place in the meaning my career, not like physically. So I originally started with nonprofits and marketing and social media right out of college. I worked in real estate for a stint, and I even ran my own real estate marketing business for a while as I started to realize that real estate wasn't really for me. So I was trying to transition out. We'll come back to that too, but that didn't work out either. So I have been at Sierra Interactive where I am now for the last almost 5 years, and I've had a lot of different roles here. I originally started in support. Success, as we talked about earlier too. And then I moved into onboarding for a little while. And for the last, I think, almost 2 years, I have been in the engineering side of things. In order to move over to engineering, I took a boot camp and I was able to move over after that point. And since my boot camp, I have also joined a project as a founding engineer. It's called Audition Cat. So Sierra Interactive is a CRM for real estate professionals, and Audition Cat is a CRM for actors and performing professionals. So it's kind of fun. I get like two different CRM worlds to work on. I like to explore curiosity, neurodivergence, leadership and growth. And as Ronnie mentioned, I really like to find ways to uplift women and underrepresented folks in tech. So I like to also write in my blog, and I just started writing guest spots, and I love doing speaking engagements, which is why I'm here with you today. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. If you all have questions, please feel free to pipe up. Ronnie, are we seeing the right screen? Just double checking. Okay, cool, thank you. But yeah, if you have questions, please feel free to pipe up and I'll do my best to answer as we go. And I think we have some time at the end as well, so you can also hold them if that is better for you. Okay, sorry, I'm just coordinating my Zoom screen here. Alrighty, so for me, curiosity is more than just a fleeting emotion. It is a skill that can be honed to drive innovation and personal fulfillment. It's an impulse to explore, a spark for novelty, and a drive to discover without necessarily having an end goal. So the thirst for knowledge guides our unique ways of interacting with the world, and it's also a pattern of behavior. As I have grown, I have tried to retain that wonder many of us felt as children, where we're experiencing most things for the first time. However, you might resonate with the fact that it can be easy to forget to bring curiosity along for the ride. There's often a lot of things that we feel like we have to do to succeed, or we shy away from what we really want to know for fear of seeming stupid or asking the wrong thing. I found myself becoming pretty rigid over time, and I began researching curiosity for curiosity's sake, so that I could get a better grasp on how to exercise this skill more in my own daily life. And wouldn't you know, curiosity is a muscle that, just like physical muscles, needs to be exercised so you can grow it and maintain it. And if you let it go to the wayside, this muscle can atrophy. But if you challenge yourself over and over, you'll see an increase in your curiosity, and it will come more naturally with time. So typically we look for that comfortable sweet spot, which is just between overstimulated and overwhelmed and understimulated and bored. But at the far ends of these spectrums, we can still reach for and access curiosity. And little did I know, I'd been doing it all along. I just stopped leaning into it as much when things get hard. But the truth is, leaning into curiosity when things get hard and you're out of your element is actually the perfect time, instead of relying on what you think you already know. So let's talk a bit about how I define curiosity from my own research, and then we'll jump into some strategies that can be applied to problem solving with a few stories sprinkled in along the way. So curiosity is more than just that simple desire to know more about a topic, concept, a question. It's a fundamental aspect of our human experience. Through curiosity, we can build trust, empathy, and meaningful connections. As you get to know more about the other humans we interact with, you can start to understand their unique experiences. We can also build stronger mental pathways and memories. So when you seek knowledge for the sake of understanding, you are much more likely to retain it and be able to recall what you found. For instance, I don't know if any of you were like me, but I would like memorize things to pass a test in school. And a lot of that stuff is just lost to the ether. I have no idea where it is, but whenever you learn something for the sake of learning it, you are much more likely to actually retain it. So with curiosity, we can also breed more creativity and consider other solutions. So as we ask more questions, we can train our brain to start to think outside the box and access less obvious ideas and options. When demonstrated by leaders, people also find that they are more likable and more competent. Typically, I think that's because they seem, or at least are more invested in their own team, and they help their team consider obstacles and opportunities from a different perspective. When leaders ask questions to try to learn what's going on before acting, their actions tend to be more intentional rather than just guesswork and like, I'm just doing stuff because I think this is right. Um, that's a good one. Sorry, people are putting things that they remember, which is awesome. All right, Anne. So curiosity is not all rainbows and sunshine, though. There are a few common challenges that can prevent people from using their curiosity. One of those is discipline. So often, whenever I think of curiosity, I was thinking of impulse and embracing change. And of course, that's part of all of this. But just like many things, it actually takes disciplined practice to become good at it. And we can easily find ourselves in complacency mode. And if we stay there, we lose touch with curiosity and we're just following the status quo. Challenge yourself and practice often. Fear can come in many forms, often with curiosity. The fear emerges as a judgment from others. So for ages, we have naturally fallen in line with expectations of our tribes because it meant survival, safety, community, and often companies and teams express curiosity as a value, but almost as often, leaders fail to relinquish their fears that embracing curiosity will lead to less efficiency, higher costs. And it's true that curiosity can be a risk because we just have no idea what the outcome will be. But ultimately, this is an expression of value in name only because of the fear of failure. So to combat this, you can challenge the status quo at whatever level you feel comfortable with. Even small questions can bring new insights to apply to your project, your team, your things that you're working on. And curiosity can be applied outwardly, but it is also extremely important to apply it inwardly to build humility. You can learn a lot about yourself as a human being, but it's also really tough to ask yourself these hard questions. So what I like to do is try to consider events as if I am a third-party observer. I remove myself, I remove my emotions, and I try to think about the actual words that were said or the actions that were taken to see if I can glean something new. Don't be afraid to dig a little bit deeper than your comfort level, and remember to be gentle with yourself. You are allowed to recognize struggle without being too hard on yourself. And if you can take what you learn and apply those lessons moving forward, then it's worth the extra push. And you're just like everyone else here, you're still learning. So the more you grow your curiosity, the more you will tend to open yourself up to other points of view. And humility allows us to listen better and fully consider others with more empathy. To sum all of that up, I define curiosity for myself as an urge to learn and grow, and as a way of interacting with others, and a way to use it as a framework for approaching problems. Gosh. So on that note, you might be wondering how engineers tackle intricate problems. And as someone who has had many different careers, many jobs, and I've tackled tons of different problems at all stages of my life, I can tell you the secret. We solve problems in the exact same way that everyone else solves a problem. And for me, I have divided this into 5 core parts. So we break down the problem as small as possible. We look for patterns or related elements wherever we can. We, especially up front, ask a lot of questions so that we can deeply understand the problem. And although we're asking lots of questions, we shouldn't let it inhibit us from starting. Once we tackle the challenge, we often will continue to ask questions as they arise, because in most scenarios, iteration is possible. So don't be afraid to ask questions. And finally, enjoy the process. I do recognize that not all problems are fun or exciting, but try to enjoy it as much as you possibly can. Let's see. Yes. I'm just checking on the chat too, so everything's good. As a lifeguard and an aquatics director at the YMCA early in my career when I was working with nonprofits, we had to be able to think quickly on our feet in the face of an emergency. Same thing. So I had to break it down and assess the situation. I had to check to see if any of the scenarios that I trained on match what I'm working with here. If the person is coherent or if there are bystanders, I had to ask questions to understand how can I best help what's happening here. And then I would take charge and get the help needed to maintain safety and hopefully save some lives. And when we were doing drills, I honestly enjoyed the process of understanding how to help, if only for the fact that I could be a force of good for someone in need. Although in less dire circumstances, while working in real estate, we often had to navigate conflict. So again, we break it down. What are we clashing over? What is stopping this deal from proceeding? Or what does each side want to get out of this deal? When it comes to patterns in real estate, actions are often taken out of fear, whether it's fear of losing or fear of missing out. This is a huge investment for many people. So there's a lot of fear, which causes a lot of confusion and strife. But asking questions of our client early on in the process really allowed us to get to know them and their needs. It helped build that empathy and trust so that we could allow for better negotiations, but also sometimes help them see sense, because again, fear sometimes makes you emotional and you fail to see reason as easily. But when conflict arises, this is the time to ask more questions. And that was true of both sides of the conflict. What does each side want to get out of this? What are they after? Why are they upset about this bump in the road? Or for instance, does this affect their end goals, or does it touch a nerve that we wouldn't necessarily know about? For instance, in my home now, I've had to deal with a lot of water problems. And if I were to sell my house right now and somebody asked me to fix a pipe, to them it would seem silly, but to me I'd be like, I'm really upset that I don't want to do this. So sometimes you have to figure out what is happening so that you can work through the negotiation. And although negotiation can be difficult, if you approach it with a curious mindset, it can be really fun actually to tease out a win-win result, finding out what everybody wants. And then also, while I was working as an onboarding manager here at Sierra, I was tasked with a massive undertaking to streamline and automate our customer onboarding from a heavily manual process. Again, the first step was to break down the problem as small as possible. So we were in the weeds of each individual step. And there were so many spreadsheets and diagrams so that my team and I could align and check for misunderstanding. And throughout all of that, we also sought to find patterns in the process, which was very necessary for this project in particular, because there were so many manual things going on. Finding similar steps allowed us to combine where we could or cut out the repetitive areas. And then while looking for patterns and breaking it down, I asked so many questions. So although I had worked at Sierra for a while, I had been on our support team working as a subject matter expert for our platform. I worked with customers closely to solve technical problems, and I had even worked in real estate, which is our core customer base. This was totally new territory for me, so I did not assume I knew anything, and I wanted to get the full picture, because as we worked through it, I was able to continue asking questions, continue asking for feedback, and we went through a ton of iterations to each time we went through an iteration, the embedded problems became more and more clear. So we were constantly iterating on this. And this is actually one of my most enjoyable projects that I worked on. I learned a ton, and my curiosity kept me very engaged and inspired to come up with solutions that would make a better experience for my team and our customers alike. And from a more technical perspective, because I am an engineer now, when I wanted to learn more about software development, I was able to get in my 9 to 5. I jumped up at the opportunity to join Audition Cat when my friend asked if I would be involved. I wanted to learn more about API development, DevOps, infrastructure, authentication and login procedures. And for each of these areas, I've taken the exact same approach as you see here. I break it down, I look for patterns, I ask questions up front to understand the problem. As I tackle the problem, I continue to ask questions so that that will help me guide the solution. And I enjoy the process as much as I possibly can. So now that we have covered various examples, let's talk about some techniques we can use to build our curiosity. And let me just check. All right, we're having fun over there. That's great. Woot automation, yes. First, let's be clear that we are all equally human. And the ideas that I'm sharing with you, I still have to remind myself to apply often. But when I do, that's where the magic happens. So selfishly, I've done a lot of research to reprogram my brain and retrain my actions. And I've tried to simplify them and distill them as much as I can to make it easier to practice curiosity as a pattern of behavior. So not all of these will come naturally, but practice is helpful. All right, so observe and investigate. If we step back and observe whenever possible, rather than engaging, we can really get a better sense of what's going on. And you can start to be internally curious, which is actually kind of fun sometimes. You can also seek out unbiased sources and practice discerning valuable options as you investigate. So you can look at social media, podcasts, newsletters. I have a whole list there of various options. And don't forget that you can also ask your fellow investigators. Understanding beliefs and opinions from varied perspectives is a very helpful source. But keep in mind that they are not sources of fact, rather they are sources of experiences. Whew. All that said, there's a lot of words out there, and it's a good idea to avoid information overload. So when you find some sources you feel like you can trust, that's when you want to start spending more time on the subject matter rather than the sources, and then just occasionally review your sources to make sure that they're still valuable and valid to what your end goal is. And I actually once heard a great way to think about this information overload. If you treat your information like treat your information like nutrition, your information intake like nutrition. It should be varied and diverse, and the sources should be nutritious, and you should keep portion control top of mind, which is all to say, be selective. Attention to detail can also transform complex projects. So when you have time to deeply understand your surroundings and the problem at hand, you can apply the necessary nuance to come up with really innovative solutions. So for example, throughout most of my time at Sierra Interactive, I have worked with Twilio. This is a VoIP phone carrier, if you're not familiar, which is voice over internet protocol. So basically it's an online phone. I mainly work with the A2P 10DLC, which is application to person 10-digit long code. There's an approval process, and essentially this is to cut down on consumer junk and spam traffic. And while working on this in support, I spent a lot of time working to understand this complicated process so I could translate it to my team and our customers. It's very complicated sometimes. So by doing this, I was able to help us navigate a majority of our customers getting approved as a verified business so they could continue working with their leads and clients. And I had opportunities to, throughout the project's lifetime, to work directly with our engineering team as a resource. So I was able to also translate the flow of work from user input to API submission, and then how to troubleshoot returned issues that started to become commonplace, so that we could actually work through all of this together. And because of this deep knowledge, I was able to take this with me as I moved into onboarding. So this helped me with that massive efficiency project. It made it a little bit easier because we could collectively have a better understanding of what would be needed from our customers and our team moving forward. so that we could more seamlessly guide our customers through the process. And even now in engineering, I spent all that time getting to know this detailed process and working with the engineering team. It was actually very helpful because the engineering team who originally installed it, like now I'm working on a project. It's a proxy API, which essentially is building a layer of safety between our platform and the vendor. So I'm building this proxy API that's essentially replacing what we had so that we can simplify this complicated process as much as possible. There's a lot of change going on in the moment, so it's very messy on the back end. But I became a knowledge sponge, so I could turn around and absorb all of this and turn it into powerful solutions with collaboration and training and a lot of documentation. Embrace failure. This one is one of the hardest, especially because we are so often told to avoid failure in life. But we can start with small things that typically have like small innocuous consequences to practice embracing failure. So right out of college, I worked for a while in marketing and social media. And although there are tons of algorithms and articles and tips and best practices, I have found that a lot of that work relies on trial and error. When you mix creativity with trying to convey a message, it doesn't always land. And most attempts in this arena are pretty low key. Like, you can have some small, silly posts that don't have any issues, but occasionally it can go very wrong. But in any case, the attitude of embracing failure can make those missteps sting just a little bit less and can open you up to different ideas when you learn what is and isn't working. I also ran a real estate marketing business, as I mentioned earlier. As I was realizing that real estate wasn't my cup of tea, I was trying to work on transitioning out. And I tried a few different things to make it work, but ultimately I learned it wasn't for me. And in a lot of ways, it was a failure, but I learned so much in the process, like how to manage workloads, how to handle my own book of clients, and how to work with contractors or subcontractors and other small businesses to help me accomplish marketing materials for the realtors themselves and the homes they were selling. So even when we encounter failure, I find that we learn something new. It may or may not help us in the future, but it is expanding our toolbox for the next problem, the next project, or the next idea to approach. Phrasing and questions. It is easy to ask a question. It is harder to ask a well-framed question. There is true value in the ability to question knowledge, and the more we ask, the more we learn about ourselves, others we interact with, and our surroundings. And you can also journal about your experiences or find a friend, especially one you can trust to be honest with you so that you can start to improve your phrasing over time. And I have a few suggestions. We can reflect on our intention before speaking. So take a moment with yourself and ask, what is my intention? Often we judge others based on their actions because we can't know their internal intentions, but with ourselves, we have the benefit of being able to check in on that. It takes the ability to be honest with yourself, but if you know your intent, it can help you in rephrasing your question. Be very careful with why. A lot of people are triggered by a why because it feels like they are, or you are questioning them, or you're questioning their authority or their approach. And honestly, they may not even know why. So it can cause a lot of negative reactions, and you may not find the information that you're seeking, and it may not align with your intention. So words matter, and there are ways to rephrase your why to reach desired results and still get to the why behind. So for instance, instead of why are we doing X, you could consider something like what will improve if we do X, or who might benefit when we finish doing X, instead of something like why did you choose to do Y. You could do something more like what helped you decide to choose Y, or how did you approach the problem to figure this out? Or instead of like, why am I going to work with the Z team? You could consider something like, how did you consider team dynamics? Or what skills do you think that I can bring to the table to help the Z team? There might be a reason. We can also use pauses to our advantage. A pause is a powerful tool. It's often challenging, it is for me, but ultimately it gives the responder time to think. You'll be less likely to lead them to answers that they wouldn't have chosen otherwise, and it encourages the responder to go further in their answer and motivates you to truly listen to their unfiltered answer. We can also resist the urge to use disguised questions, which are essentially just statements or feelings in the form of a question. So like, for instance, yes, those awkward silences, Shy. For instance, do you think that so-and-so is a bad parent when they stay late at work? That's a leading question that won't direct you to the real answer. Rather, your bias is tainting the answer. That's not a great example, and I don't think that way, just so you know. Rapid follow-up questions also cause these leading questions. And this is one that I am very guilty of. Follow-up questions before the responder can speak often alters their response. So if we think back to considering our intention and our goal is to truly learn, then we should refrain from those leading or rapid follow-up questions that are likely going to give inaccurate results. We can also consider when to use open or closed questions. So you may have heard about these in the past. A closed question is essentially one that leads to a yes or no or a direct answer. So something like, what's your favorite color? Green. It's over. That conversation, I mean, you could start it back up, but that question's over. So open-ended questions seek deeper answers, like what did you do to celebrate your birthday last week? To learn more about someone or a subject, we should typically lead into the more open-ended questions to dive deeper. Closed questions do serve a purpose, but they often allow the responder to decide how much they want to provide. So you hand the power over to them, which in some cases can squander your chance to practice your curiosity if you have limited time or ability to ask questions. Applying these questions inward is also very helpful for that humility piece. Real quick, we're going to cover the questioning funnel, which I find to be a great tool to clarify a problem or find an answer. So you start with the target in mind, ironically. So we're going to start at the bottom. And then you head to the top. So once you know what your goal is or what you have in mind that you want to answer, you can start at the top and ask your open-ended questions. So when we're trying to solve an engineering problem, we might ask things like, what does success look like for this new feature? Or what sort of data do we need to store in our database? And then we can start to probe, clarify, and reflect. So as we get more details, we can ask questions that are typically still open, but might also mix in some closed questions to clarify details. So if we're monitoring the usage of this new feature, have we decided on the metrics of success or the tool we'll use? If we're sorting this data, do you anticipate issues retrieving it? Then we can start to summarize and confirm. So as we narrow down what information we need to reach a good level of clarity, it's good to just check in and make sure that you're in alignment. So let me check, did I miss anything? We're implementing this new feature to improve our users' experience sending emails from our platform. And we'll use this tool to check that it's being utilized at a metric that indicates success. Is that right? Okay, so we want to store this data in the database, and it's possible we might run into performance issues if we use join tables. Have we already considered another approach? As with the last example, we might need to confirm understanding and then head back into the funnel just for more clarification or as you're better reflecting on the problem. And at some point, ideally, we reach the target and we're aligned in understanding. The last one is seeking experiences. So challenge yourself to do something new. It might be a class, it might be travel, it might be like virtual reality or joining a sport or a club. It can be big things or very small things just to get the process started. And every new experience brings new insight. So don't underestimate it. You can start by changing something minor in your daily routine. For instance, like taking a new path when you're walking the dog, or try a new food or recipe, or maybe you try out a new style. Each opportunity opens you to new perspectives, provides varied experiences to increase your creativity, and expands your empathy for others. So if we take that new path when walking the dog, for example, perhaps we go to a new to me neighborhood and I meet a friendly new face. Perhaps we see a community garden as we're walking around, and that's something I've been wanting to get involved in. Now I have a lead. Or maybe you run into construction or an unsafe environment and you have to overcome this unexpected challenge to navigate it. For myself, I sought new experiences in the Audition Cat project. I continue to learn and share my growth through my Code Out Loud Substack newsletter thing. And I approach different things that I'm learning about there. And even being here with you today is a way for me to expand my experience. So thanks again for having me. And finally, every day is an opportunity to bring a curious mind. In some of the most unexpected moments, I have found this to be true. And hopefully you have a simple set of tools to help you start to branch outside the box whenever you need it. And increasing the frequency of your curiosity practice should help you start to see new perspectives and consider new ideas to think of solutions you may not have otherwise. So if you use your discipline to maintain your practice as you get a handle on your curiosity, you do your best not to let the fear of what others may think leak into your practice. You've got a lot to bring to the table by embracing failure and asking well-framed questions. Consider the impact you can make. There are many moments for me recently where I realized that asking these questions, even just to myself, I am shocked to find how often my thoughts are based on old or inaccurate information and assumptions. So challenge everything, investigate, and review your resources. Give it a go and start to ask yourself the really hard questions and welcome that humility that may arise when you do. You will surely learn more about yourself, understand why you take some of the actions you take, and perhaps glean some insight into how you speak and how you're perceived by others along the way. We're all a work in progress, but I have found that I genuinely enjoy life more when I am able to take that step back and observe and make the time to find and enjoy new experiences, however big or small. And I'm hopeful that today you can walk away with a spark of inspiration wherever you need it most. So thank you. Oh no.